I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. First item on the agenda tonight is the approval of the agenda. So I have no changes.
John,
Yes?
could we, when we get to bills to pay, you want me to wait until then?
Nope. You want to change it? We'll change it right now.
Yeah, I would like check number 328457 to Hodges and Louisi for $9,272.47, voted on separately, please.
328457.
Mhm.
$9,272.47.
Correct.
Got it. Okay, we
Would
can
it
do
make
that.
sense just to separate that out from now on, because that seems to be a recurring
You
thing?
can- Yeah, we can make that separate.
Then we can do
I
the
know.
math ahead of time.
Sure. We'll take that under advisement.
Yeah. Just saying.
Take it easy. Do we have any other changes to the agenda? Then I move we approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
Roll call.
Motion by Anderson, second by Munda. Mrs. Conway?
Yes.
Ms. Campbell? Yes. Mrs. Biondi?
Yes.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Walls?
Yes.
Mr. Munda?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes,
I have 7 yes. Motion carries.
thank you. The next item on the agenda is recognitions.
I do have one item. Mr. Meyer, can you join me? I've asked Mr. Meyer to come up here on behalf of all of our high school staff. Each year, the Lake County Regional Office of Education does an attendance week, and they try to encourage all the schools in Lake County to participate. And over the last couple of years, I know that we've been honored a number of times, and we participate annually. And it speaks highly of our efforts to increase attendance and maximize attendance at both of our campuses. I know our deans and our student support teams work very hard in terms of addressing attendance issues. And I'd like to congratulate Mr. Healy and Mr. Meyer and all of our staffs who work with our students and their families on having a 95.77, you can split one there, 95.77% attendance rating during attendance week. It was 4th place, but it speaks even more highly to our emphasis on attendance for all of our kids. So congratulations. Thank you.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is the reception of visitors. Has anyone signed in to speak?
Nobody?
Nobody signed in to speak? Nobody signed in. Would anybody like to address the board? Okay. We'll move right along then. Next item on the agenda is the president's report. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the Triple I Conference, the annual joint conference in Chicago, November 19 is Thursday. It really starts on the 20th, Friday, 2021-22, and it's held at the Hyatt Regency in Chicago. So this year we have, I'm not going, I know, and I think Barb Conway is not going. And Barb is normally our delegate at the joint conference and the big meeting when everything is voted on. So we're going to need another member to do that, and I know. So, is anyone interested?
I would be interested.
I thought you might be. So Catherine is interested, and certainly Barb, if you come back again, you can certainly go back to being our delegate. But
Like,
for this year, we'll, if it's all right with everyone, we'll just let Catherine be our delegate at the conference and do our voting for us. I'm sure you'll keep them happy.
I move that we select Catherine Campbell as our delegate to the Triple I Conference this year? I think we have to vote on it, John.
I don't think we do. If we do, we can vote on it next meeting, I'll check on that,
Okay,
because we haven't voted on it before, ever, so. But if we're wrong, we'll find out.
thank you.
Sure, happy to, always happy to look. So we do have the report to the membership and everything, so, if everybody would take some time to review that, then we can certainly discuss issues at the next meeting. Anybody, or Catherine, who has any strong feelings about one, or doesn't like the way the recommendation goes, or however, we can just,
In the past, we've always just gone through and we've followed what the recommendations were.
It doesn't appear
We
that there's
didn't-
many this year, no
No.
resolutions.
Right.
They're just reaffirming prior positions, so there's not a
really
lot.
nothing new to think about.
We have about 5 or 6 that we would have to decide as a board how we want to
Okay.
vote.
Well, we can all read through those before the next meeting, and then we can, discuss them and see if everybody wants to go along or what have you. That'll be for the meeting on, whatever date that is, 17th? Yes, 17th.
Yeah, it's that third Tuesday before we go down.
Right. 17th. Okay. And then, obviously, then if everybody's going or not going, they need to let Jean know. If you haven't given her your schedules when you're arriving and whatnot, that would be helpful for planning purposes. So there's a sheet of paper there in front of you that you can sign up and give her a little more detail on what your schedule will be. And I'm sure there'll be a packet with, information on things to do and whatnot at the next meeting, right, Chief? Right. So, if anybody hasn't signed up for a conference on Friday, they have the ones on Friday morning and Friday afternoon, that you should sign up for in advance. So if you haven't done that and you're still interested, they may be closed at this point, you'd have to just check, but if there's one that you're interested in, be sure, and let Jean know that as well. Alrighty. Also, we have the Hodges and Louisi newsletter, everybody see that in front of them. And then that's all I have, except for moving on to committee reports. I think we have a report from the insurance committee.
The insurance committee met on September 28th. We talked about several subjects, including the Affordable Care Act, how the impact of the ICD-10 new coding method would potentially impact claims. Most of the insurance committee was talking about some free options for wellness incentive programs provided by Blue Cross Blue Shield, which is our provider. So the district is going to start in January implementing a couple of those programs. The first program will be an incentive to increase our enrollment in the Blue Cross Blue Shield portal. So there'll be Visa or other gift certificates given for randomly based on that increase. Also, we would do a program called Well on Target, which would provide incentives for different activities that you would log in, such as going to the gym or going to a trainer, things like that. So this has been brought up as an objective of the Wellness Committee. They have presented District 211's program, and we settled on beginning with these two since 211's was a very complex program. So that was, the committee also recommended eliminating the HMO Blue Advantage plan because we only have 2 enrolled in there. And we did also talk about compound drugs, which are a questionable method of dispensing drugs that has become somewhat popular and costly. So we're going to get more information for that for the next insurance committee meeting. And again, the Affordable Care Act changes. Any questions from the board? Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Next, we have the curriculum committee.
Last Wednesday, the curriculum committee met, and the very first thing we talked about were the 3 new courses for next year, and then 1 for summer school. So the committee had recommended that we move forward with computer science principles, STEM physics, and the dance class. And just so you know, the strategic planning survey that we put out, it was, huge on having us have a computer programming class and also the dance class, so we thought that was kind of perfect timing on that part. The other one, the French immersion program, if you remember, Janet Kosonen came here about a month ago and presented that summer trip, and we were able to work out a way that those students could get credit for actually going to the French immersion trip. So, the other things we talked about were the curriculum guide changes. There was no substantial changes. It was just basically deleting some things, wording, changing wording. There was a document, I think I put in your board docs, that described all of the changes in each section, so I don't know if you read through that. The other thing we talked about was just the new course approval process, and we had like 17 items that we want to make sure the teachers answer when they bring forward a new course, so that we would go through and get those items, so that they would get to those. Are there any questions? Yes,
Simple question.
yes.
Through this process, do you ever eliminate courses?
Sometimes we do. We did not this time, but that was part of the new course proposal process. Like if they bring something on, that probably means something is not gonna run. And sometimes we don't eliminate it from the curriculum guide, but we know that we might not run the class. But in order to bring the class back in, it takes a whole process, so we kind of leave it there just in case.
And the chemistry class is kind of a continuation of chemistry anyway.
The STEM physics.
STEM physics, yeah.
Yes, we, 3 or 4 years ago, we brought forth a class that was called chemistry physics. And because at that time we started with the ILS, the Integrated Lab Science course, and then they went to biology. And we wanted those kids to have chemistry and physics before they took the ACT test as a junior. Well, now that we've changed our science program to go biology, chemistry, physics, that's why we're thinking the STEM physics course will be good, and then we can eliminate the chemistry physics course. So we did eliminate one.
Okay.
Forgot. Thank you, John, for reminding me.
I got another question, sir.
Yes.
So this is classes that were added to the curriculum for the 2016-17 school year?
Yes, 16, 17, correct.
So then we capture that in our budgeting process, because there was a cost associated.
Right, and that'll probably come through my budget, so when we bring that
Bottoms up.
forward, I will make sure that those things are gonna be in there.
So then really just in terms of rollout, since we're in the middle of the strategic planning, does it make sense tonight to approve that, or would it work better to maybe talk about this in our strategic planning, and this is what we'd like to do, and it addresses some of the issues in the survey, just to kind of roll it out rather than, I don't know what anybody else thinks. I
I
just
guess
feel
I
like
don't
because,
understand your question.
I feel like because we're in the middle of the strategic process,
Right.
we're right at the middle, that we should be talking about this, or introducing the fact that we have, these discussions out of the committee, and how those discussions address the survey. And I feel like it should be rolled out with the strategic planning committee before we actually do the final, approval that we're doing tonight.
So you want the strategic planning committee to know that we're gonna offer the computer science and the dance,
Just
is that
to
what
have
you're
that-
saying? Okay, is that what
Have
you're
that
saying?
discussion and
Well, she
just tie
said we would delay
together.
the vote until after they roll it out to them.
Are we
Which I-
voting? Will we vote on it?
Yeah, it's on here.
It's on your-
It's D, item D.
I just feel
Oh,
like
okay.
it feels disconnected, because some of those changes also address the issues in the survey, and we've talked about that in strategic planning.
The problem would be,
Feels like a
is,
disconnect.
go ahead.
I think that there's a several problems, it's not that it's a problem, but one is, we have to get these down into the program so that when students are signing up for courses for next year, which we do fairly early, so we need to get this done. And I don't think that specifically we're gonna talk about specific classes in the strategic plan. We're gonna be talking about expanding areas or aligning curriculum and things that are there, but we're not gonna be discussing specific classes as a part
No,
of the
but
strategic
we've
plan.
talked about things that were addressed in the survey, and we've talked
Right,
about
I
curriculum.
understand.
I mean, I just feel like somehow we need to
We'll let
bring
them,
that
we can let
home
them
at the
know.
next meeting.
Well, we can certainly let them know that we're doing something that is germane to the
Bring it full
strategic plan
circle.
process. We want to bring that full circle.
Right.
I don't think it necessitates a delay in the vote, at least for me personally, so.
And I would just add, Dr. Algren, I mean, at the last, I don't remember if it was Saturday or last Tuesday, you kind of talked to this point. You said that we're not gonna, some things are important, we're not gonna wait.
Right.
Or, and I think you specifically talked about some curriculum changes, that people have to start signing up for classes actually in this fall timeframe,
And
right?
it was, I mean, and our annual curriculum committee process is independent of the strategic planning. It's nice that some of the things that were decided in the curriculum committee were kind of reinforced with the strategic plan, but I don't think there's necessarily any reason to wait. But I will, on November 3rd, we are updating the strategic planning committee on some of the work of our smaller committees. We can definitely include an update from the curriculum committee as part of that.
I think that would be that.
Okay, we're ready.
Anything
Thank you, Willie.
else? Yep.
All right, we have another committee report, I believe, the strategic planning committee.
Right, and-
Go figure.
And so most of you are very aware of our strategic planning committee. We've had 2 meetings on October 13th and 20th. And then this past Saturday, we had a different group with some students and some different community organizations. It was more of an open field to that meeting. We had some great feedback, especially with the students being there. They definitely added a sense of purpose and authenticity to what we do. So that was great. And they also contributed, kind of found out where we're at in the process, which is we've developed our mission statement and reviewed and tweaked our belief statements, gone through our SMAC plan, if you will, and still tweaking a few words, but almost done. And we're now starting to move in our next 2 sessions, which will talk about the themes under which we construct some specific goals and objectives. And that's very important just moving forward, that we really kind of have specific language on the direction that we would like the district to go in for the next 4 years or so. So specificity from the board would be extremely important if there are feelings that you have collectively that you would like to see come out of those next 2 meetings. But we also have tried to, we're still looking for some alternatives for a tagline. We've got a number of them which we created and added to on Saturday, and some kind of vision tagline for the district in conjunction with our mission statement. So we'll probably continue to do some work on that, because we started on that on Saturday and got input from all the participants on the Saturday morning session. So things are going very well.
Agreed. It's been a real pleasure. Okay, then that's the end of the committee reports. We will move on to the superintendent's report.
Thank you. Just to update the board before we get into some presentations on some other items of monthly updates. We had 6 FOIAs in the past month. One was from the Chicago Tribune News Sun, 4 were from Pegmarar, and 1 was from RJV Properties. I've also included this month those September monthly reports that we've kind of been making reference to over time, just for your information. So you'll see in there for September, our attendance was at 95.6%, and enrollment at 4274, I think, on the last day of September. I showed you out-of-school suspension reports, just the number, which are great and limited, but just to show you what those out-of-school reports were. And then we also included a copy of our monthly staffing report. And notice on the front page of that report was the one change that we made on September the 22nd. Just as a reminder, any changes we make to that staffing report, we'll try to keep on everybody's radar throughout the year. And in addition to that, we have a number of presentations today. And I think we're going to start with a presentation on the FY15 audit. Is that correct?
Yes, today we have Betsy Allen, who's partner with Miller Cooper and Company Limited, who's our audit firm. She's going to do the audit presentation today. I've got 2 documents that were in your board packet, but we're going to hand out the formal copies. The first one is the letter to the Board of Education from the auditors and the audit firm. Yes. And the second will be the bound copy of the audit for you to keep. Mrs. Allen will talk about some items that she's highlighted that she feels important for the board to be aware of. And certainly the board is welcome to ask any questions that they have on the process or the results or internal controls, whatever information you'd like to have. We've got more.
We've got plenty.
Oh, okay.
They don't go well under my pillow.
You don't read it every night before you go to
I usually do, you know.
They could put you to
My
sleep
father
at
was a
night.
CPA, he says, you gotta read this stuff, so.
Or use it to fall asleep at night, right? That would be a good thing to use for. All right, go ahead.
Go ahead.
So as Carol said, you have two of the deliverables with you, our required communication in the board letter and then our bound financial statements as we refer to them. I'm just going to quickly go through some of the information in the bound financial statements that I just want to point out. First of all, on page 1 is our independent auditor's report. The district again received an unmodified opinion, which is the highest level of assurance we can give as auditors to a district. Another place I'd like to point out is on page 2. There is an emphasis of a matter paragraph that's called added to the audit this year. That was due to implementation of GASB 68 and 71, where the net pension liabilities for the IMRF and TRS have been presented on the face of the financial statements, which I will point out in just a minute. And due to that, there was a restatement of the net position, so that paragraph has to be put into the opinion this year. Oops, sorry. Then on page 5, starts the management discussion and analysis. I've always probably told you in the past and other boards that if you ever just want an overview of the district, some highlights, look at some condensed financial statements, this is a great part of the audit to read. It is prepared by management. It just gives, like I said, some summarized financial information, and it also explains the different types of financial statements that are presented within the audit. Then on page 13 starts our government-wide statements. These statements differ from the fund financial statements that you're probably more used to seeing as they report capital assets and debt on those statements. This is where I want to point out there's a few new line items that are showing on the statement this year. And those refer to deferred outflows of resources and deferred inflows of resources, and those are related to those pension amounts and pension liabilities that are being added. But the actual pension liability, there's about a $3.4 million TRS pension liability and about a $3.8 million IMRF liability that are showing in the long-term liabilities within this statement. So that's the unfunded portion of those two plans that have been put on the government-wide financial statements this year. And as we get back to the notes, I'll point out a few places in the notes where you can see this information.
Should we ask questions at the end, or?
Either way.
Okay. Can you explain to me what the reserve fund is as opposed to the unreserved fund on page 5?
Where are you looking? I don't know where you're looking.
Maybe I should go to this. Let me go to this and we'll see if it corresponds. Oh, it doesn't correspond. It looks like it might be page 3, but I'm not sure. Here's what it looks like.
Oh, you know what? You are looking at the state AFR annual financial report.
Oh.
That is filed with the Illinois State Board of Education. So that's a separate document that's presented on a regulatory basis that's filed with the Illinois State Board of Education. So that document is not in.
Oh, that's why
It's not,
it
yeah.
doesn't look right. Oh, here, let me make
No.
it to you. You want the top?
Yeah, so that is from the AFR.
Oh, okay, okay. Well, can you explain to me on here what the unreserved funds means versus the reserved funds? You want to look at it?
Yeah, but I don't know.
Help
Is
yourself.
this a report that she
I don't know where
does?
you're looking, I don't
Yeah,
know
I
where
don't
you're
think it's
looking at the reserved and unreserved.
Is Do you know what she's talking about?
Yes.
Is this a report that has
Is this
anything
your
to do with
report?
our auditor or not?
Yes, it is our report.
Okay, cool.
Betsy, can you just talk about reserve fund balance versus
Yeah, is it-
unreserved in in
Right, so-
concept?
Well, there's really not, so the AFR is done on a regulatory basis. You can reserve a fund balance if you have a specific use for it, but GASB 54 within these statements, in the bound financial statements, when you look at them, GASB 54 separates them into 5 different categories, and that between committed, assigned, unassigned, restricted, and non-spendable, I think of the other one. So if you're looking at an AFR done by, that you're filing with the State Board of Education, their classifications of fund balance are gonna be different than what you're gonna see on GAAP financial statements. And that, but you won't, if you have reserved fund balances within the AFR, they're gonna be restricted for particular purposes. But like I said, a restriction on that report you're looking at is different than a restricted fund balance on the bound financial statements that we're looking at tonight.
Okay, I didn't understand that, that's why.
That's okay.
So the unreserved means they're not for a specific item, is that a
Right.
good way to phrase it?
Unreserved dollars.
Okay,
And in these bound financial statements that we're looking at, most of those amounts would be shown as unassigned.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Sorry to throw you a
No, that's
curve,
okay.
but I was looking through mine.
So let's go back to, on page 14, which is our statement of activities. This is gonna show us, where the restatement was done to our net position for the implementation of GASB 68 and 71. Another thing I wanna point out is every year we have to report those TRS state on behalf payments that supposedly the state is paying in for you. And do this implementation,
Supposedly.
well, I shouldn't say that, right?
So,
Yeah, but due to the implementation of GASB 68, TRS has calculated those payments in a different method, and so there's been a big jump that we've had to report. Last year, there was about $8.9 million of TRS on behalf payments. This year, there are about $12.5 million that's being reported within the audit.
Where are those reported on page 14? Is it on
In
page
the-
14?
It's on page 14, about the 4th line down. It says
State
state
retirement
retirement.
time.
Oh,
contributions.
thank you, thank you.
And then on pages 15 through 20 are the fund financial statements and the reconciliations that reconcile the fund financial statements to the government-wide statements that we were just looking at.
And actually, on page 15, Liz, you'll see, or Mrs. Biondi, you'll see non-spendable, restricted, and unassigned fund balance, which
Keep going on the
Mrs.
bottom.
Allen
bottom,
referred
On
to.
the bottom.
referred to.
Non-spendable, restricted.
Right, so those are 3 of the 4 classifications that are used from GASB 54 when that was implemented. And then sorry, quickly on page 19, I just wanted to point out that at the end of the year on the governmental funds, the district ended up increasing their fund balance by about $1.4 million. Then I want to look at page 23 is the start of the notes to the financial statements. I just think there's a few pages in here that are important to point out with the implementation of the new pension liabilities. Page 23, note E2 discusses and describes the 2 GASB statements that are being implemented. Just gives a short description of them. And then
I'm on page 23. Where's the?
A2, down the bottom of the page. So note A, and then
A is new accounting program.
right here. So these are the new accounting pronouncements
Oh,
that
okay.
have been implemented,
Okay.
that have been implemented this year.
Okay, thanks, sorry.
That's okay. And then if we can turn to page 36, which is note F, this is where we start with all the new notes for the pension liabilities. I think it probably added about 12 pages or so to the audit this year. So, on page 38, this is where we show the TRS, the district's net pension liability, which is about $3.4 million. But even sort of more interesting under that, there shows the state's proportionate share, which is about 151 million, and that's the amount that's just associated with your district. It's not the whole state, that's just the amount associated with your district of the unfunded part of the TRS. So it's something to keep in mind. I know with some of the new Senate bills out there when they're talking about, adjusting spending or not spending, but how they're gonna allocate, who's gonna pay for it. That number's a big number to look at, and they start, telling the districts they have to fund part of that. And then on page 42, when all these pension liabilities were done this year, both TRS and IMR hired actuaries to perform all this. So they come out with their actuarial assumptions that they do. So it's sort of interesting when you look at this page 42 for TRS and page 47 from IMRF. Right now they're using, the current discount rate, but this is a sensitivity study that shows that they use a 1% higher or 1% lower where those liabilities would go to. And there's some pretty big jumps by just changing some of the assumptions by 1% up or 1% down. And then on page 55, this is where I talked about in the statement of net position where in the long-term liabilities that we're showing the TRS and the IMRF pension liabilities that show the ending balances of them. The rest of the footnotes are pretty much, pretty standard from past years, and there's been no other changes to them except for the stuff that we just went through. Then on page 62, there's 2 schedules from IMRF and 2 schedules for TRS that are new required supplementary information schedules. All these schedules will be built on and will become 10-year schedules. This year, because this is new, there's only 1 year information, but there will be 10 years of information as we keep gathering it over the years. And then on the remaining pages are just schedules that are consistent with the prior year. There's schedules by fund for a budget to comparing budget to actuals and information from 2014 to compare. There's a statement in there for every one of the funds. And then the last section is a schedule of the operating costs and tuition charge per pupil. This is taken right out of the financial report that's filed with ISB. It's a formula that they have, and we just presented it as other supplemental information within the financial statements.
Okay, I have some questions.
Okay.
Are you finished?
With that, yeah, I have a letter to look at, but we can answer questions, that's fine.
Okay, let's see. On page 17, I'm not sure if it was in here. Let me see if it was in your financial report. 17. Is this still the one that you do to the state?
Yes.
That's what I thought, okay.
Yes.
It says other objects are $4,097,343. What are other objects?
Other objects, if you're just looking, you must just be looking at a total within one of the funds.
Okay, yeah.
All school districts follow the administrative code 101 now, right? 101, it was the old IPAM. And you report by fund, function, and object.
Mm-hmm.
Other objects is one of the object codes. You have salaries, employee benefits, and other objects is an object code.
Okay.
Primarily tuition.
It's what?
Tuition.
Tuition, right.
Tuition.
Right. Thank you.
Tuition from students, right?
No,
Tuition
tuition
to
paid
districts.
To districts.
to districts and to private
Service providers.
facilities.
And, and private facilities, okay. Thank you. And it says that we spent $1,990,000 for in-state tuition, is that, or special ed, how's it?
It could be special ed, it could be vocational, it could be hourly.
Vocational? Or hourly?
ROE.
ROE.
Like school.
Thank you.
If you look on page 77 of the bound statements that you have,
Page
or 76 and 77, it shows the different functions of the tuition that's paid, regular programs, vocational ed.
Okay. Thank
special
you.
ed.
Thank you. And then, let's see. On page 62 to 63, let me see what that is, if it's in part of yours.
Is this in the document that's filed with the state? Is that what we're looking
Well,
at?
that's what she's looking to see if it is or if it's in.
It says notes to the annual financial report, so I think
So
it's
those,
in here.
no, so those are the notes that are filed with the AFR
Oh,
that goes to the
okay.
state. They're a little bit different than the ones in the bond financial statements because there's some regulatory basis information in them.
It says that any gains or losses from the sale of property are considered interest income. Why is that?
Sale of investments. If they
Right.
sold
Okay.
an investment, not sale of property.
Oh,
It says
okay.
investments.
Sale of
But they would,
investments.
but they were just selling investments.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I remembered wrong. Forgive me. It was, must have been the morphine. Okay.
What?
She said the morphine.
The morphine.
Carry on.
The gains or losses are reported as interest income?
Correct. If you're reading on a regulatory basis,
Okay.
you only have accounts that follow the IPAM. And so within the investment income, that's where any gains or losses would go.
Okay, then on page 66, which, let me see, that would be in your report, but I'm not sure what page. Does the daily cash balance in the financial institutions earn interest? Maybe that's a question for Carol.
Some of our investments do earn interest.
Is that the 9,000? We keep about, I know we kept about 11,000 in one financial, 11 million, I'm sorry, in one financial institution. Do any of those funds earn interest and how much?
Generally, each month you get a cash and investment report from me, and that outlines where, the rate that we earn, and that would be generally in the investments we hold in PMA.
Well, I remember getting it in the past, but I don't remember it recently, I guess I'm.
I'll double check, but we
Okay.
usually will put the interest
I
rate.
think it's in there in the treasurer's report and
Yeah,
all that.
yeah.
I'll
20 or
look.
30 pages of stuff that's in there, so.
Okay,
it's
I'll
in there.
look, thanks.
Hmm?
Let me see, please. Okay, now it says that, I don't remember what page this was, I was writing notes. The bank is, now, our assets in the financial institutions, and I'm going to the 11 million because that's the one that strikes me. I remember that on several reports, or about 11 million. We are insured for, what is it, $1 million with FDIC?
No, it's.
We're in-
FDIC is 250,000
Oh,
per account or per bank. But you
Yeah.
also have other collateral that's pledged. That is something that we do look at, to make
okay,
sure that all your money is collateralized or insured. And there is a comment as part of our notes that shows the bank balances that have to be collateralized or insured, that you have no uninsured cash balances.
okay, now, you say we have no uninsured, but is that because the bank is securing our assets? Are they saying that they're secure and they're gonna pay if something happens?
Some of it is either FDIC insured,
Right, 250,000.
and the other part of it, you probably have collateral pledge. A lot of.
What is collateral pledged by the bank?
Yeah,
So if the bank fails, our collateral's gone, right?
no, it's
No, because it's pledged by,
pledged by an outside
right, it's pledged by an outside bank
party.
that your banking institution goes out and gets for you.
Oh, okay, because my next question was, do we have insurance if the bank fails?
That's what the collateral is.
Okay, that explains it.
And another thing to point out too is, I think you have a lot of CDs with PMA, correct?
Mhm.
And a lot of those with PMA keeps them at 250, and they're all bought at separate banks. So
Okay.
PMA is buying all them, but they're buying them all at different banks.
Right.
So therefore,
So they're
they're all
protected.
FDIC insured.
Okay, thank
If
you.
all the banks fail, it's over anyway.
again.
Right.
Okay,
Thank you, I appreciate your help.
No problem. And then just real quick, we have a required communication to the board letter. Just want to point out a few things there, and probably killing the Gatsby's to death. But on page 2 is where we point out the different Gatsby statements that were adopted during the year. And on the next page, we show policies that are going to be effective for future years. They're not always all going to be effective for your district, but we like to point them all out because things can change and something might become effective for you. One I'd like to point out is Gatsby statement number 74 and 75 have to do with the other post-employment benefits. Or right now, we show that pension obligation in the financial statements, but in a couple of years, they're going to switch the OPEB reporting to reporting a pension liability, just like we do for TRS and IMRF. So that'll be another change for you. On page 4, just want to let everyone know, Carol and her staff were very well prepared for the audit, as they always have been, which helped us, everything run smoothly and release everything on time. And then when we released the report in October, there was a management representation letter that was signed by Carol and the superintendent in order for us to release the report.
thank you.
Wait a minute, I had a couple more questions.
So I think, we can answer a question for you, because it's not gonna change the audit, but we can get you that information. If you'll write those down and give them to me, I'll get you the information.
I want to ask them for the public's knowledge,
We'll
not
give
just
we'll
mine.
give them a report at the next meeting. They won't miss it. So we'll make sure that you get me the questions, and I'll get answers and we'll report out.
For the public,
For everybody that's here. We'll put it on tape.
okay. Thank you,
Thank you very much.
thanks.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next item is the, okay, all right. Okay, IMRF debt.
Tonight, we have Tammy Shalmo back with Shalmo from PMA Financial. They are our financial advisors. Tammy today is going to talk about 2 topics. One topic will be borrowing to pay off our IMRF liability, and this is a discussion that we have had in the past. The second topic that she will talk about is refinancing our 2003 debt to save some money to the taxpayers. This is independent of the resolution that you are going to either adopt or not adopt, which is later on the agenda. So I wanted to clarify that. One other point I want to clarify tonight, based on my conversation with Mrs. Allen, is we are proposing a $3.8 million budget to pay off a $4.8 million IMRF liability. We're going to go back to IMRF to double check that number. Betsy thinks the source of information from IMRF might not be correct, and the number might be $2.8 million. So for presentation purposes, well, we would borrow 2.8.
I'm sorry.
So 2.8 versus 3.8 for a borrowing. Our liability right now is 3.8 or 4.8, depending on
Who you talk to?
who we're talking to, because it's based on 2 GASB pronouncements, and the pronouncements are different. One's 50 and one's 68, which Mrs. Allen's talked about. So, again, the presentation, Tammy will go through that, but the resolution will be a separate item, and I'll talk more about that when we get to the resolution.
And this is specifically about the IMRF debt that was talked about in the audit. This now shows up in the audit that we've had. And we talked about this before, we talked about the fact we're paying 7% interest to the state, as opposed to, doing it in a different way and saving a lot of money.
Right, and I will talk about that in greater
Okay.
detail.
Thanks very much. As Carol said, I'll walk you through this PowerPoint. We'll first talk about the issuance of debt to pay off that IMRF liability, and then we'll talk about an opportunity for the district to refund its 2008 C bonds for some present value savings. So first off, talking about how you might pay off that IMRF liability. I'm going to go to the next slide, which refers back to all those numbers. So some of you may recall from past practice that the board has the opportunity or the ability to issue non-referendum bonds. And that's against what's called a debt service extension base. So school districts in tax cap counties in Illinois, many of them have a debt service extension base, or a DSEB as we call it for short. And for you, it goes back to the 1994 levy. So in that year, you had a certain amount of non-referendum debt outstanding, and the levy tied to the payment for that year established your DSEB. Every school district has a different DSEB, or in some cases, they don't have one at all. But you have one, and it was originally established again back here. It was just under $1.4 million. But since then, a law was passed in 2009, and that base now increases by the CPI each year. So now your DSEB is about $1,559,000. So you have the ability to issue non-referendum debt today, as long as your annual principal and interest payments for non-referendum bonds are never more than $1,559,000. You can go out for a maximum period of 20 years, and then there are certain types of bonds that can be called non-referendum or limited tax bonds, as we call it. So I'll go back to this slide for a second. I know it's really ridiculous to try to see this up here, but I'm going to highlight just that column. You can tell there's a column shaded with peach there, and there's a bunch of numbers listed, and you can see it pretty well in your books.
Page 4.
Thank you. The bottom line is, if you contemplate the sale of some non-referendum bonds today, what you have to do is make sure the structure today, the annual payments, fit within the numbers within that column. Okay? That's really the main takeaway from that. So you have the option. You could issue, as Carol said, and pay off up to $3.7 million if you wanted to, or some number less, of we call working cash bonds. You may be familiar with those, but under state law, you as a board can issue working cash bonds, and you would sell them on a taxable basis to pay off that IMRF liability. What you would actually do, though, is you would first use your own fund balance to pay that liability by the end of the calendar year, because there's a benefit to doing it now versus waiting until even January. Pay it off with your fund balance, sell the working cash bonds in a few months, and then just pay yourself back once you get the proceeds from the working cash bond sale. There are a couple processes the board has to go through before it can sell these bonds. One is to hold what's called a BINA, or a Bond Issue Notification Act hearing. It functions much like the hearings you have for your levy or your budget every single year. And you also have to follow the 30-day petition period, where a notice goes in the local newspaper, and taxpayers or registered voters of the district have an opportunity, if they want, to submit a petition to the Board of Education. From start to finish, when you adopt an initial resolution to sell the working cash bonds to when you actually get the cash and be able to pay yourself back, you're looking at about a 10 to 12 week process. Again, I know this is really difficult to see up here, but this is showing if you were to borrow and use $3.7 million of proceeds to pay off some of your IMRF liability, if you've got it, I know at your places, but you can see in the current, I'm sorry, thank you. In the current market, plus a cushion of 25 basis points for 0.25%, it would cost the district total principal and interest of about $5,050,000 over the life of the bonds. And again, we're fitting the payments, as you can see in that sort of peach shaded column, within the margin that you have in every single year. And again, with that 25 basis point cushion, we estimate that the rate, the true interest cost that the district would pay for these bonds over its life would be a 4.18%, okay? And I know that's an interesting number to think about, as Carol would talk more about comparing that to the rate that you have with your IMRF liability on the other side. So that's how much it would cost, estimate, in the market with 25 basis points of cushion, okay? And fitting again within your debt service extension base constraints. So I mentioned that there are a couple steps, and we'll put them up here in a calendar for you. If you would like to move ahead, you can bring what's called a resolution of intent, and a resolution calling that buying hearing to the board for its consideration at your November 17th meeting. You have that binding hearing then at your meeting on December 15th, and then you could adopt a parameters resolution for the sale of the working cash bonds at your January 19th meeting. You've gone through the parameters resolution process before. First of all, most importantly, it names the delegates who on behalf of the board would ultimately approve the sale. So it's not just PMA out there selling your bonds without any involvement from a district perspective. And it also is valid for a 6-month period, so it gives flexibility. So for this schedule, you can see in the next steps, we'd actually be in the market with the bonds by the end of January, close and get the proceeds to the district so you can pay yourself back in early to mid-February. But if things occur in the market that cause us to want to take pause and maybe slow things down a little bit, because that resolution adopted on January 19th, again, is valid for 6 months, we could wait. We can exercise that patience, which really is beneficial to you as a board, giving you flexibility. Okay? Any questions about the working cash bonds or that discussion? All right, so we're going to shift gears now and talk about the opportunity to refund the 2008 C bonds. So refund, again, just as a reminder, is really another way of saying a refinancing, because we're looking at lowering the annual debt service payments of the district, which are actually passed along to taxpayers, okay? This chart, again, very hard to see up here, but you have 13 outstanding bond issues in the district. 6 of them are callable, which means that when you as a board originally sold the bonds at these different points in time, you told investors that you were preserving the opportunity to, if at some point in the future rates were lower than they were when you originally sold the bonds, you might want to refund them. And so investors knew that when they bought those bonds from you. And so the maturities that have boxes around them, those represent the different principal amounts that are callable. And when you think about refunding bonds, there's really 2 things you need to think about. One, of course, is, are rates lower today than when the district originally sold them? But the other thing you have to think about, and not all districts always talk about this at great length, is how far away from the call date are you? Because that will impact how much it costs really to fund the escrow to pay off the refunded bonds. Because the mechanics of a refunding are you sell new bonds and you take the proceeds from that bond issue and you put it into an escrow. And the funds earn interest until you get to the call date on the originally issued bonds. In this case, the 2008 C bonds, let's flip here for a second, have a call date of January 1st of 2018. So if you were to execute a refunding within the next few months, you generate proceeds and they will earn interest and pay off callable bondholders on January 1st of 2018. Okay? So you may say, we just said we've got 6 bond issues that are callable. Why are you only talking to us about one of them tonight? And that's because we have a database in our office that monitors all of your outstanding bond issues, and it takes into effect the consideration where are rates today versus when you sold your original bonds, how far are you from the call date, and it looks at all that information and tells us, well, it makes sense for the district to consider refunding these bonds today, but none of these make sense. The district could not generate savings. And in many cases for you, that means when you sold a lot of these bonds originally, you got good rates in the market. So you need continued improvement in the market, which is a whole other discussion about where the interest rate environment may go. But that's why we're only talking about just the 2008 C bonds tonight. And there are rules from the IRS, I won't get into great detail other than to say they dictate when you can refund bonds and how frequently you can refund bonds on a tax-exempt basis. Leave it to say that they don't want you out there what they call churning the market and selling tax-exempt bonds too often, because every time you do that, the federal government loses money. So they have rules about it. These 2008 C bonds, because they were sold for capital projects, there was no refunding component in that bond issue, because it was done for improvement of buildings. Per the rules of the IRS, you could refund those bonds now, or you could wait to get really close to the call date. It's your decision. I will tell you, though, that if you do the refunding now, as we'll talk about in a minute, you get this sort of one bite at the apple. You'd have to wait to refund these bonds again until you get within 90 days of the new call date on the refunding bonds, okay? So that's an example of sort of churning the market. But either way, you do it now, or you could wait till you get closer to that call date. This is our best estimate in the market. If you were to go out and refund the callable bonds, and you can tell probably pretty quickly by looking at this chart,
The bonds that are outstanding now from 2008C have a final maturity in January of 2028. We are not extending the term on these bonds. They would still mature in 2028. That's important. And based on the existing payments that you have compared to where we think the bonds could be sold in the market and refund the old ones, you generate savings in total of about $514,000. And that's what's actually passed along to taxpayers, okay? We always look at a present value analysis. So we take the present value of the $514,000, which is about $424,000, and we divide that by the principal amount of the bonds that you refund, which is the $5,370,000 listed all the way at the bottom. And you can see that that generates 7.91% present value savings. I'll tell you that in the industry, if you can achieve at least 3% present value savings, then as an issuer of municipal debt, most units of government would take a look at that and say, this is something we should definitely consider doing. Okay, and by the way, that number is net all the costs of the transaction. Okay, it's already factored in there. I mentioned earlier that not only is it important to think about where rates are now versus when you originally sold those 2008C bonds, but how far away are you from the call date? Because the closer you get to the call date, the more efficient the entire bond issue or the escrow itself is. So when we're further away, we have what's called negative arbitrage. It means that we need more proceeds, a bigger bond issue basically, to fund the escrow. The closer we get, we don't need as much. And so there's a number 3 lines down, 3 lines up. It's about $236,000. What that's basically saying is if in a perfect world we were right up against that January 1st, 2018 call date, that number would be almost zero. And that $236,000 of saving would be added to the 424. So your savings number would be bigger. But the thing you have to keep in mind is, you might say, well gosh, we would love it in a perfect world again to have as much savings as possible and no negative arbitrage, but the reality is you incur interest rate risk if you wait for that, okay? And this next slide coming up here speaks to the power of that value of waiting till the call date. In a perfect world, if interest rates stay the same between now and the fall of 2017, this is how much savings you could generate. Almost $1 million in total. And on a percentage basis, it's about 15.4%. But I will tell you that there's an important break-even number to think about, and that is if interest rates go up by at least 80 basis points, or 0.8%, between now and the fall of 2017, you'd be better off doing the refunding now. So the question then really becomes, what sort of interest rate risk tolerance does the board have? And I'm sure there are many in this room that would anticipate or wonder if rates will go up by that much in the next couple of years. I think there are a lot of people that think they might. This is an historical interest rate graph. It's called the MMD index, which stands for municipal market data. And we look at this index in the public finance industry every single day. So whether you're a school district in Lake County, Illinois, or a different type of governmental issuer anywhere in the country, when you're selling tax-exempt bonds, your bonds will sell relative to or they spread to this index. So we focus very much on the trends of the various lines. And the red line represents a 20-year bond, and then it goes in 5-year increments to the bottom, where the blue line's a 1-year bond. So again, looking at the trend and where we are today versus where we've been, this chart just goes back about 25 years. We could take it back further, but we're not at the very lowest point, but we're pretty close to the lowest point in history. So certainly I would say there is more risk that rates will go up than there's a likelihood that they're going to come down much more. And we all know there's Fed meetings coming up again in I think later this week or next week. There's another one in mid-December. If you read different experts' position papers about what it thinks the Fed may do, there's certainly back to discussion that maybe they might raise rates in December, or maybe they will wait until the first quarter of 2016. There's a lot of mixed messaging. But I mention that because that's one thing that influences the municipal bond market. There are a lot of variables that influence the market, and I don't have a crystal ball. I'm hopeful that for the next couple of months we'll continue to see relative stability in the market, but certainly once we get into that 2016 calendar year, I think there's even more risk that rates will start to go up in our market. Okay. We already talked a bit about this slide and that 80 basis point break-even analysis. The timetable for refunding is much simpler than the process for the working cash bonds we just talked about. The only required board action is that you adopt parameters and escrow resolutions. And we could do it at that November 17th board meeting when you consider the other couple of resolutions related to the working cash bonds. Then we could tee things up pretty quickly and be ready to go and price the bonds as early as that first or second week of December and close the transaction by the end of the calendar year. We're not locked to that timetable though. Again, you get 6 months with this parameter resolution as well for this transaction. So flexibility is key, and we monitor the market very closely. If it goes into the January timeframe to price, because that's what's best for the district, that's what we would do. Finally, I wanted to show you this chart. Again, I know it's easier to see in your books, but this one's a little bit better. This is trying to show you what's the estimated impact of the working cash bonds and the refunding combined, okay, individually and combined. So on the left-hand side, we have levy year listed, and we're showing the value of a $250,000 market value home that we're estimating would increase as the total EAV of the district increases over time. And so the box on the left side shows the savings from refunding the 2008 C bonds. So you can see the tax rate goes down, technical term, just a smidge, but your decrease in bonded interest payments a little more than a smidge. But you'd see there would be a decrease in homeowners' tax bills. You can see on the working cash bond side, we do have an increase in terms of, we show the rate and also in the tax bill. And then the net effect in that green shaded box combined, you're looking at, for a $250,000 market value home, tax rate increase of about 1.6 cents, or it's about $12 on a tax bill in that first year. Okay? And I will not read all this disclosure stuff, I promise. So,
Thank you.
what questions do you have?
Well, on the 2008 ones, we have until the next meeting, for sure, right?
Yeah.
And we're just talking about it now.
Right.
So we have a chance to study and whatever, think about it when that comes back at the next meeting.
Right, you would potentially have two resolutions. One would be for the issuance of working cash bonds, and the other one would be for the refunding of the 2008 C bonds at the November 17th meeting.
So Carol, what is the combined amount of when we talked about paying off the IMRF, we talked about using the refund on the TIP money, that was it, the TIP. And didn't we also talk about depleting the IMR fund? And combined, what number does that come out to be?
What we had talked about and what is budgeted is approximately $800,000 of TIF money that is a one-time revenue source for us, plus an additional $200,000 in budgeted money. It's in the budget. So the district would pay out of its budget $1 million. So whether the liability turns out to be 3.8 or 4.8, we would pay $1 million of that. So the borrowing would be 2.8 to 3.8 plus issuance, cost of issuance.
So we are using that money. That's why it's lower than when it goes on paper.
How long is it going to take to find out and validate the liability?
Mrs. Allen's given me two high-level sources, and IMRF, so I'm going to email them tomorrow.
Right.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Anthony.
Okay, back to technology infrastructure.
Thank you, Betsy and Ken. Rico, back in May, the board directed or gave us permission to do a little assessment of our information.
Yeah, real quick reintroduction. Shane Wood from Secura from McQueen Technology Group, who visited you in June, is back to share some of his findings, our findings, I say our because in June, we started the process of compiling all the stuff on our end, provided them along the way, some guiding questions from them, and then they visited early September. They had a couple visits on site, follow-up phone calls, and what you're going to see tonight in front of you is a result of everyone's work to try to give you kind of a snapshot of where we are today. And I think it'll include some recommendations of where we could possibly go in the future or consider going in the future. So Shane, it's all yours.
Thank you.
I'm not going through the tax presentation myself.
Thank you.
Right to the.
Oh, I recognize you. You've been a member of the board. I didn't do long.
Thank you very much, Jim.
Presentation was in the cafeteria.
Right.
Curious, sorry.
I'm just gonna get right down to it. It's been a long day. This is a little bit about our organization. But I wanted to stop on this slide really quick, just to let you know that the reason that you asked us to do this is what we do. It is one of our core functions is to do the current state technology assessments and then make future state recommendations. We're going to just focus on these slides, the current state. But in the report, we've given some key recommendations for future state as well, and then some cost analysis. So the main reason we brought in is you had some concerns about your operational effectiveness around your systems and technology. And we went ahead and spoke to the different resources within IT. We spoke to human resources, finance, senior management, and all the service technicians, as well as we reviewed all of your current technology documents. We did tours of both campuses and reviewed all of your technology. So, this is kind of a visual of what it kind of looks like right now. It's a lot of, it's the students, the faculty, the administration. You have some cloud-based applications, you have some on-premise applications as well. You have a firewall that's really not adequate, but we'll go through some of those. And you have a lot of people talking to a lot of different people, so it's not, there's not a lot of information across the board. But when we did our audit, what we found was you had about 150 physical and virtual servers, which is a lot. You had about 50 switches, about 100 terabytes of storage. All is off-premise. You have 4,500 Chromebooks, 300 plus desktops, some printers, and then you have some security and surveillance cameras. The software that you currently have, you have over 40 software that you currently support. Some of them are on-premise and some of them are web-based. Some of them are not being utilized at all. So.
How your slides are different from what we.
Oh, because I'm actually kind of flipping through.
Page 14.
Yeah.
Oh.
Sorry, so this is
okay.
the complete report that I gave you. I'm just going to flip through and get my.
Okay, thanks.
So these are the compilation of the different. We, as I said, we spoke to the staff. We have currently 14 IT staff or positions within Warren Township High School. So I'm going to really focus on these two slides, the next two slides, which is what are your current risks and our recommended mitigation. We really don't have a business continuity or disaster recovery plan in place. And this is, for folks who might not know what that is, if one of your locations goes down, your current business continuity is to look at the other location. But if both locations go down, or something, if you have a storm of some sort, you're going to be, there's no recovery. So what we would recommend is that you do an off-site cloud, cloud-based providers such as IBM Software, Amazon Web Services. It's fairly cheap, and all the numbers are also on this report at the end as well. And then you also lack policies and procedures.
which is a huge risk. We currently don't have, you have very limited amount of technology policies and procedures, and then you don't have any enforcement of the ones that you currently have in place. So, that's, the easiest way to do this is to implement a user-friendly web-based application. We recommended a product called Zendesk. It's a business leader. It's very easy, and it does set up your compliance and policies right within the technology side. From a facility standpoint, we found some sprinklers that were exposed in your server infrastructure. And from that standpoint, if the fire alarm goes off, the sprinklers are going to go off and right into those servers and bring you down. So it's a quick fix, it's just we're preparing those facilities that it needs to be addressed. Cooling systems for some of these facilities as well for the servers. It was inadequate. You definitely need to upgrade your cooling system as well. But I'll give you some recommendations. If you go to this type of infrastructure, you could actually reduce the number of on-premise servers, which could, you could stay with the current cooling system. That's something to keep in mind. And then your wireless connectivity. There's some intermittent wireless connectivity issues within both campuses. And what we found was the product that you have, Aruba, is actually one of the best-in-class products. It was implemented, I think it was 3 years ago or 4 years ago, right?
Current controllers 3 years ago,
3 years ago,
previous
yeah.
controllers 5 years ago.
And you currently have a managed services organization that monitors and supports that, but there hasn't been an assessment done to review the current infrastructure and the architecture to see if that fits with what's grown at Warren. You have 4,500 Chromebooks that you issued as well, and so you need to definitely take a look at that. So what we recommend is doing a full audit of the current wireless infrastructure and reconfiguring it. I believe that's already on the table. That's already been spoken to with the managed service provider and in the process of doing that. And then data center security. So when we walk through, you have quite a few servers. The doors were unlocked, and we walked right through it. I'm sure anybody could walk right through it as well. So the data is exposed, and it's a huge risk as well. So upgrading to a better security system is definitely something that we recommend. Any questions on this? So we moved, we decided to change this into process policies and facilities, and then hardware, software, and people. So hardware, you don't have a standard replacement cycle in place. When I say that, it's it's usually 3 to 4 years when you should start looking at replacing all of your hardware. There's not a cycle in place right now. You do have something for Chromebooks, but for the rest of the hardware, for your servers, you don't have any type of process in place. You also are using, when you do need servers, you're purchasing secondhand server equipment, they're refurbished. It's working until it doesn't. And so it's something to definitely look at. And you don't have any off-site cloud-based backup, which nowadays is extremely secure, and they just and it's very cost effective as well.
I thought the cloud was not a very secure place.
It's very secure. So that's a huge misnomer about the cloud. That's all they do. They are the providers of server. So think of it as a server farm that's in a secured facility, and all they do is make sure that that those facilities have the best security processes in place. A lot better than any individual organization. So, you know, the recommendation is to go ahead and migrate to a cloud service provider. You know, at least some of your information. And the easier thing about this is currently all of your applications are virtual, so it's a very simple migration. At least do a backup copy of it. Your software, as I said, you have over 40 plus software applications. There's really not a standardization or an audit process for those. So, you know, it's definitely needs to have some sort of audit and consolidation of that software and review of utilization as well. The security. So your network parameter is definitely not the highest firewall, and so it definitely needs that. That is a issue that came up in our discussions and our findings. The current firewall meets the basic standards, but it is in need of a upgrade. And I believe that's already in the budget as well for next year, Carol. That's on there. You don't have a standard image. When I say image, it's the image that you have on laptops. It seems that you have quite a few images across the board, and they change on a regular basis, and there's no standardization. And it's, our recommendation is to create, you know, go to a limited, a handful of standardized images, and then from an upgrade standpoint, it's easy to manage as well. And then integration as well of the software and applications. There's nothing in place. From a people standpoint, there's a lack of redundancy in your technology resources. So when I say that is, you have one network engineer that supports all 150 of your servers and infrastructure. If something happens, though, there's really nobody else. That's a huge risk. And then also from a skill standpoint, you have limited crossover competencies across your resources as well. And then you have a high ratio of technology and equipment to staff. You have 14 staff supporting quite a bit of equipment. And then you have some your technology staff are union as well, and there is some risk associated with that as well, from a data security standpoint.
What is the risk? Can you explain that?
Sure. From the union standpoint, or from all? So, from the standpoint of there's confidential information that IT personnel across most organizations are privy to. There might be a conflict of interest between a union-based organization and the organization school as a whole. And now you have some confidential information that's going back and forth. There is a conflict. What we found is other organizations such as yourself don't have that. I'm going to stop right here with this slide. The rest of the presentation goes into future state and some recommendations and how much it would cost and things like that, and how long it would take. But I'd be happy to come back and speak to that. So, any questions?
I think this was well worth the money.
Well, you know, it's like anything else, it's, as we look at things, you know, you go back and look at what you've done, you go, that was a good idea when we did it,
Right.
you know, whatever. So I mean, it's a matter of really trying to stay updated, and the fact that we don't have redundancy is not shocking to you, because we don't have any redundancy with anybody, which is a function of, you know, the climate we're in, but we still need to be cross-trained and so on and so forth. I mean,
Absolutely, and I think the education as a whole is just, technology's gone through, you know, it's been a huge push, and they're catching up.
Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff in there that could be upgraded, so I think we have to hopefully step back and, come up with a measured approach to the whole thing, so we can do something that's
Set a couple priorities.
effective and not just, we could do a, we don't want to just blow up and do everything at once, we do nothing.
We can't afford to do everything at once either.
I don't even want to look at the cost page, we'll figure that out later. But, yeah, thank you, I mean, very, very well done, we
Thank you.
appreciate that
Thank you
information.
very much.
Thank you.
And there's no doubt that we need to, reinvest, I think, and speaking of wireless things, a lot of the, we talked a little bit about security at the meeting, at the strategic planning, and there's a lot of security products on the market now that would make the school more secure, but they also report back to the security system through your wireless feature. And, I mean, what it does is allows you to put access control to the door without putting a wire to it. And that's what costs a lot of money. You gotta drag a wire to the door and get it wired all the way through the frame, that costs a lot of money. But if you can communicate with it wirelessly, then you can put it on any door and you can have access control for the price of the lock, as long as your wireless is working. So, I mean, that's stuff that you really have to consider when you have, the wireless feature and how good it is and what it's doing, because it's not gonna get less, it's gonna, even though it's exploded, it's gonna just explode even more. So, anyway. Okay,
Thank you, and we have a very exciting report. Laura and Terry are here to talk about our last year's Schuler Scholar Program and some really exciting news
great.
for us young people.
Hello there. We have some materials, can we just start them and?
Of course.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
You haven't got near enough paper today.
Beginning our new the Press's 4-page brochure, which details our programming, and then this is our presentation in paper form.
Thank you for letting us join you tonight. I'm Terry Rockwell, I'm the Regional Director for the Schuler Scholar Program. Laura Gabriel is your new school director. She's the more important person in this room. She'll be running the program here at Warren Township. So we do this report every year for all of our schools. It's kind of our annual report of sorts. We look at kind of our current state of affairs, size and growth. We look at what our current selection process, our recruitment process looks like. And then we look at what our current high school students are doing and our college students. So we're going to skip over a lot of these slides because we have 10 minutes and we'll try to even make it shorter because I know you guys we've all been here for a while. So this is a quick overview. We have thus far, we started in 2001 and thus far we have served about 961 total Schuler Scholars. They're either currently in high school, currently in college, or they've graduated from college. We have right now 13, soon to be probably 14 in the next month or two, high school partners. We most recently added Mundelein High School this year. Our next high school partner that we'll be announcing will probably be in the city, the Chicago Public School. Can you see?
No, you're fine.
So we like to just kind of let you know what we're spending on your program in your school. So we spend on average across all of our high schools $10,700 a year on those students, another $1,100 a year on our college students. Then you multiply that out by 4 years. So our total commitment this year as an organization to the Warren Township students is over $1 million. And that money really goes towards staff, running our program, coaching our students, working with our students, and programming. It does not go to scholarship money. We let the colleges do that for us. Let's skip over this guy. And skip over that one. Okay.
So in this slide, we're looking at the demographics. Who are the Schuler Scholars? And this is across all of the Schuler Partnership schools. So we are working with students who primarily fit 3 main criteria, and sometimes we're looking at students who fit maybe 2 out of the 3 criteria, but I would say at least 2 out of the 3. And here are the criteria. Underneath the bar graphs, we're working with kids who are underrepresented on college campuses, so these are underrepresented ethnic minorities. We're also working with students who are often of low income, from low-income families, and also first-generation college-bound students. The last bar graph is just showing us how many females. We tend to be a female-heavy program. In the last bar, 2015, I think about two-thirds of our new Schuler Scholars that were just recruited are female.
Which is consistent with trends across the country in college and so forth.
And so you can see that we have, we're doing very well attracting students in the Hispanic and Latino population. We've had a slight decline in the African American population, and the Asian and Caucasian and other are lower as well. But we're certainly a diverse group, because the scholars come from a little bit of everywhere, and particularly at Warren. And I'm just 2 months here in the job here at Warren, but it's just been a real pleasure going into the Schuler room, which is just a couple doors down if you make the left out this door, and the resource room is full of quite a bit of diversity. It's good to see.
So in continuing to look at the students, we call this process scholar selection. It's our recruitment process. We just wanted to show here that we invite a very large number of students to attend what we call Family Night. It's our information center session. We hold once a year, and that is the only place that you can obtain an application. And those students are defined. We work with the middle schools to identify students that are sort of minimally eligible from an academic standpoint. What we don't know at that point is what their income situation is, their ethnicity, whether they meet those other sort of profile characteristics that Laura addressed. But we invite them to Family Night, and we many of them self-select out upon reading the invitation itself, because we explain in the invitation who we are. So there's sort of a screener there and a self-selection process. So of those, about this year 79 came to Family Night. Of those, about 85% actually applied, so a few more self-selected out after listening to our information session. And then out of those, we accepted about 85%. So we're not looking to, have really high numbers in terms of we only take a tiny number of students. We don't want to waste people's time, students' time. Our application process is long and lengthy. We want to make sure that students who come in and who listen to us and decide to apply are potentially candidates.
So the Warren Township High School, we divided the GPAs into weighted GPA and unweighted GPA, and because each high school has a different weighting system for GPA, we're particularly interested in looking at the unweighted core GPA of our scholars, and on average, if you look at 2015, 3.4, our scholars are generally maintaining a good solid B+ average.
And we look at the core GPA because that's what the colleges that we partner with do. They look at the 5 core classes, they look at the level of rigor, whether they're honors or AP classes, and they look at the letter grade. So a lot of the unweighted GPA stuff is sort of an initial screener, but the more important thing is this unweighted core GPA calculation. We also look at AP rigor, so you can see that last year, you can see overall that each year, starting 2012, 2013, 2014, overall more of our students are taking at least one AP course. To be honest with you, most of them are taking, by the time they graduate, like 9 of them or something, some ridiculous number. But as schools add more AP courses, then more of our students are taking, and more schools are adding AP courses at the freshman year level. So here at Warren, last year 78%. We actually, you went down a little bit from the year prior because we found that some of our freshmen weren't quite up to, able to competently handle the freshman AP course along with the other courses that they were handling, so we pulled them down. So we'll do that. We don't force them to take the top level class in every single situation. We do want them to take a rigorous schedule, but we want them to be able to meet the challenge without suffering grade-wise. And then you guys do really well as far as your average scores on AP tests, which is nice to know. A lot of our schools struggle with the actual end AP score, so. Okay, scholar attrition, we keep track of how many students we lose. So we are able to say that if you make it through our program, 100% of those students go off to a highly selective college. And then we have numbers later that will show you that they generally stay in college. But getting there isn't always easy. And there was a couple years where we had a pretty high attrition rate at some of our schools as we kind of tweaked our process and figured out that it was better to part ways with some students and allow them to go their way, so that whereas if they continued with us, they would have more limited options because we only work with private liberal arts schools, and we didn't want to do that. So we've kind of had a couple of years which are reflected in the numbers for this class of 2015. This year we had an overall rate of 45%. Warren had a lower rate. You guys have had really pretty low attrition. I just looked at your current class of 2016, and over the course of 4 years, you will not end up with any attrition unless we're surprised. So you will have a 0% attrition rate for the current seniors. We've done really well with that class. So.
And about the same number to start with? 20,
Yeah,
22?
Sorry?
22?
Yeah, so
Approximately 15?
actually you have 23.
Okay.
So you will have, what's the net opposite of attrition? You will have growth. Because we also have started a practice where we go back in and do a sweep of the 9th graders. We relook at students during the 9th grade to see if we missed anybody, and if we have, we invite them into the program. They only have benefit of 3 years of the program instead of all 4, but if they're independent and determined enough and strong enough, they do just fine. So you're going to end up with more students in that class than when you started, which is pretty unusual. Okay. Class of 2015.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, this is the wrong slide.
Yep, yeah. Okay. So, yes, our graduating class of 2015, we had 16 scholars graduate, and you can see their average ACT was a very great 28.4. You see the early decisions, early decision 1, early decision 2, and regular decision, 71 college applications submitted. I want to point out the average package without loans, that 48,000 number, that is the average amount of money that was free financial aid that our scholars received on average.
On an annualized basis?
Yes, per year.
Per year.
The colleges that our 2015 grads have attended, you can see. Go ahead to the next one. And how they're doing in college? You're doing the persistence.
So this is, I guess, our sort of best report card. What we pay attention to is not just what it looks like for our students during high school, but for those that go to these highly selective, highly challenging colleges, do they stay in school and do they do well in terms of grades? And as you can see, they do. Our overall persistence rate over the last, looking back at last school year for the 4 classes that were in school, freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors, was at 93%, and that's been pretty typical. Our persistence, our 4-year graduation rate we estimate to be at least 85% for all of our students, and our 6-year graduation is higher than that, it's over 90%. So our students are staying in school. If you look at first generation persistence, if you look at low income students and persistence, I'm sure you've seen some of that research, it's a lot lower. So we're proud of those numbers, and that's really our report card.
We just had our first Warren Township High School college graduates. So they've been through the Schuler program, 4 years at Warren, and then 4 years throughout their college, and this is what they are doing now. So these are 2015 college grads, and where they graduated from, some of their majors, and what they're doing nowadays.
Some pretty interesting stuff on that list, if you look at it. Pretty amazing.
So for this school year then, the opportunities we have are the following. Well, first and foremost, we have a mostly new staff. I'm the new school director, 2 months in, and we have 5 scholar coaches that work on a daily basis with our students, and our 5 scholar coaches are also all new. We have an education counselor and a college counselor, and they are both well-established, good thing, because we rely on them for lots of things.
So just to be clear on why the scholar coaches are all new, we bring them in through AmeriCorps, and they
Yes.
rotate every 2 years, so this was a big rotation.
Yeah,
So it wasn't it was a planned,
Yes.
a planned
Right.
turnover.
So, but they're all great, and so we want to, I would like to, as the new school director, continue to build a relationship that my very competent predecessor established with the administration at both campuses as well as at the district level. And what I'm doing, starting this week actually, is going to visit the middle schools. I'll be talking to the middle school principals. Next week I'll be in Oak Plain Guidance Department to introduce myself as the new Schuler liaison and make sure that everybody knows our program and that we can support one another. We'll also explore ways to share, I think, within the greater community at some point, but right now I'm just trying to get my feet wet in the buildings and get to know everybody. The third bullet point, strengthening the coordination and overall communication between Schuler and Warren Township IT staff. That's an ongoing thing as well. We have some Schuler equipment, and Warren Township, of course, has their equipment, and sometimes we have to merge our equipment, and it's not always the easiest thing, so we're working on that. The last bullet point, we're still continuing to explore ways. This has been an ongoing opportunity as well. We have some African American students in AP classes, and sometimes our students have indicated to us that they feel very much alone, and that they don't have company. And so we're trying to see what we can do about that, and that's an issue that's being brought up again. Any questions?
Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Thank you.
One thing that probably Willie and I have been talking a lot about what student advocacy, right? Well, that's maybe the thing. It is so, the thing that I love when you guys present about what Schuler does is it's so focused and so clean on the lives that you're trying to touch, meaning that you're going after first generation kids. And I love the impact that it has on our school culture as a whole. And the friends of Schuler and the hangouts, that the kids who are even just friends with the kids who are in the Schuler program are probably benefiting from the exposure to, why aren't you thinking about college, and just that whole piece of what expectations bring on for kids. So it's really powerful, and I think it may play into some of the stuff school-wide that we're trying to address, because some of the same issues that you addressed in that last bullet, right, about students of color and how they're feeling in classes and things of that nature are exactly the types of things that school-wide we're looking at the same data points going, we have to make some progress in those areas as well, in terms of our school, not just the Schuler kids. So I'm looking forward to that. It's just awesome the work that you guys do. And it was amazing to look at where those kids are as they're coming out of school, as 22-year-olds.
90%, that's really good.
Yeah.
Out of college, I mean, because most colleges only run about 60%.
Right.
So you're beating the average, hey, I'm 30, 35%.
I also think it was such a great idea that you went back and looked at those freshmen and gave a second look and gave them an opportunity. I think that's fantastic. I love the program anyway, but that was such a great idea, great improvement, great way to expand the program. You guys do a great job.
Thank you.
Thank
Do
you.
you keep track of how many of your graduates get jobs right after college?
Yeah, so that last slide had some of those, and we're doing a better job, because we weren't able to, but we have a much better system now for staying in touch and following through with those scholars.
Okay,
So,
thank you
yeah,
so
we're
much.
getting
It
better
is a
at that.
great program. I really like it. Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you for your
Thank
presentation.
you. Is the update?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I've been talking to a lot of people lately, a lot of them have been talking about tonight, we were talking about financials, it's not really good news, but, you know, just in talking to, some of the local legislators, as well as the state superintendent and some of the heads of the School Board Association and IASA, there's still a feeling that right now it's just a political battle down in Springfield, that's all it really is. It's frustrating, I think, for anybody who's trying to get movement on where things are going in terms of things being funded. And fortunately, the schools have been kept out of that mix for the most part up till now. But it just doesn't look like, nobody seems to have a end in sight as to when it will end down in Springfield. They did say, however, the pieces I really just wanted to communicate to the board was they still are talking like if there's a high likelihood at some point in time that at least a 2-year tax freeze is going to happen. That everybody that talks says that that's probably likely to happen. When or how, they don't know, but that doesn't seem to be anything people are talking that's not going to happen. And then the last piece is just, you know, we talk about the pension cost shift. They had talked a few months back, last year, I'm sure, that Mary had talked to you a little bit, I think I was even at one of the meetings, about, you know, a different funding formula, and I'm sure Carol's been aware of what that impact might be for Warren. They still think at some point in time there's going to be some mega deal that's created down that's going to be all at one time. Meaning that there is going to be some kind of pension cost shift back to the districts. There is going to be a new funding formula, and they're going to wait until they have it all packaged together, so there's not going to be any all winners or all losers. Everybody's going to take a piece of that hit, if you will, financially across the state. So just the things we've been hearing. They thought it would be done by now. The heads of the School Board Association and the IESA thought that that mega deal would have been done by now, but I also don't think that they expected the stalemate that's happening in Springfield to have happened to the way it is. So I just figured I'd update the board on things that we hear from out in the world and how they impact us. So that's all for that report.
Okay, are we done with reports?
We're gonna, the next item is new business, but if everybody doesn't mind, I'd like to take a 2-minute break. That's okay with everybody?
Yeah,
Sure.
Great. We'll,
We have to vote on that?
negative, Ghost Rider. Agenda locked up. Next item is the resolution authorizing payment toward the IMRF unfunded liability.
Didn't we skip the presentation?
No. We did that right after we did the,
That was Tammy?
yeah, that was a tall one.
Oh.
She just talked about the generalities of the loan itself.
I thought Carol had something else to say.
She does, she's gonna say something.
Okay.
Aren't you, Carol?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Rock on.
We're ready.
Well, first of all, what I want to say is that the resolution that we're going to ask you to approve tonight is going to authorize reducing the liability by $1 million, which is the $800,000 in the TIF and $200,000 in the budget. That's all you're being asked to do today. I want to highlight why this is so important to the district. There is an opportunity cost to us of over 12%, which is the 7.5% we lose on the unfunded portion of the liability. So that's an opportunity cost to us. We're losing 7.5%. Secondly, if we pay off the unfunded liability, our IMRF rate, pension rate that we pay on our classified staff goes down by 4.71%. That's a total savings of over 12%
On a cash payment.
on a cash payment, which is about as high as you're going to get. So there's a large opportunity cost not to move forward with this.
That's pretty good.
Just to give you a couple numbers. we would have an annual savings of $274,000 just by reducing the IMRF rate by 4.7%. That's annual, $274,000, based on a $5 million payroll. If we pay off the unfunded liability and earn that 7.5%, we save $355,000 annually. This is in perpetuity. So our total savings in pension costs and interest earns is $629,000 per year.
If you pay off the whole thing.
If you pay off the whole thing. The first start today is paying off the $1 million and approving that resolution. Then if you move forward with the borrowing of the 17th, you're going to have a resolution for new borrowing, depending on what our number is, of refinancing 2008 seed debt, and then you'll have a second resolution almost identical to this one that will say we're going to pay off the balance of the liability, or we're going to pay off X amount of the liability. So this is money that will go back into education and that will help support the initiatives that you are all identifying in the strategic plan. So it's one of the few opportunities we see that has such a big impact to the district. So I would happily address any questions.
So, oh, I'm sorry, are there any questions? So, if we, the resolution would be that we move to approve the resolution to reducing liability by $1 million.
Correct.
Okay. So I can go ahead and do that. So I move to approve the resolution of the Board of Education of Warren Township High School District Number 121, authorizing payment toward IMRF unfunded accrued liability. Actuarial liability, thank you. UAAL, reducing the liability by $1 million.
Second. I was waiting for you to say or eliminated.
I was going to say that because we're not eliminating it for that, not yet. So we have a motion by Anderson and a second by Conlon.
That'll work.
So if there's no questions, then we need a roll call.
Mr. Munda?
Yes.
Ms. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mrs. Biondi?
Yes.
Mr. Walls?
Yes.
Mrs. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
I have 7 yes. Motion carries.
Thank you very much, everyone. Next item is the land farm lease agreement with the Peterson Grain Farm. Is that for our 100 acres?
That is.
64.
64.7 acres.
Well, that's the only part that's typical. That's the
Right.
general property. Part of it's wooded, so you can't lease it. for parking,
Right.
They've been out renting it and farming it since October 2011. They've asked to continue that. We have increased the dollars per acre, and there's an escalation clause in there for CPI. We've also have a termination provision at any time.
The termination can be at any time.
Yes.
But I still don't understand what this has to do with our mission of, the 100 acres. So this is a part of the 100 acres. I don't know what that has to do with maximizing student achievement and growth for our students.
No, this
So
is
that's a
about-
whole bigger
this is
piece,
about
not
limited
on
plan.
this today,
All right,
but,
but we already own the land, so we might as well make $10,000 on it, at least
right,
for the time.
I agree with that.
We understand
As long
you
as
don't
we
like
can
it
terminate
anymore.
this at any time, and
Yes,
let
we
them know
can.
we've sold it and
Yeah, oh yeah,
get it
absolutely.
marked someplace
No
else.
problem.
Carol, I have a question.
Yes.
Where is the 10,000 whatever being reported in
Go-
our budget?
It goes into the education fund.
Thank you.
Okay, we need a motion.
I'll move to approve the land lease agreement as presented with Peterson Grain Farms beginning January 1, 2016.
Roll call.
Motion by, can I have one thing before you do the vote? I didn't understand in the lease why it lists, okay, so it lists under paragraph 18 that the lessor is IRED Lake County LLC, but then down when you're looking for a signature, it has the lessor as Board of Education, Warren Township High School District 121.
That's a typographical error. We thought, my assistant thought we had caught all of those, so we will make that correction.
Roll call.
So it's
It will be
Oh,
as
approval as corrected.
As
corrected.
corrected.
As corrected. Okay.
I had another question.
Yes.
Mhm.
Is this the only farmer that came and offered to rent from us, or did we seek him out, or how did this come about,
We
please?
did have another farmer that did approach us, and they could not meet these terms.
And what part of the terms could they not meet?
The insurance terms, the assurances on how they would refertilize and, you know, rotate crops and things.
Roll call.
Motion by Munda, second by Drake. Mr. Walls?
Yes.
Mrs. Conway?
Yes.
Ms. Campbell? Yes. Mrs. Biondi?
Yes,
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Munda?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
I have 7 yes, motion carries.
Thank you. Next item is the serious safety hazards for the 15-16 school year.
Ms. Delabray has done a review of those and has affirmed our current safety hazards, so she is asking you to approve the safety hazards as presented.
So these are the transportation safety hazards and hazardous crossings and whatnot.
Correct.
Less issues.
Not in the building. All right, we need a motion.
I move to approve the serious safety hazards for the 2015-2016 school year as presented.
Second.
Drake and Munda. Roll call.
Motion by Drake, second by Munda. Mrs. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Walls?
Yes.
Mrs. Biondi?
yes,
Ms. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Munda?
Yes.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
7 yes, motion carries.
Curriculum guide changes and new course proposals for 16-17. These are the ones that Willie already presented to us. So we need a motion.
I'll move to approve the curriculum guide changes and new courses for the 2016-17 school year.
Second.
Munda and Walls. Roll call.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mrs. Conway?
Yes.
Mrs. Biondi?
yes,
Ms. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Walls?
Yes.
Mr. Munda?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
7 yes, motion carries.
Choir trip proposal. Yay! Are you gonna sing this or are you gonna just report?
Oh, no, I
Oh.
have students next time.
All right.
Okay, I'm Natalie Colgan, I'm a choir teacher here. This year the proposal is to go to San Antonio, Texas. It is a little short trip, it's from Saturday, March 19th to Tuesday the 22nd. We wanted to be mindful that it is Easter that next weekend, so we wanted to have students the opportunity to visit family if they're out of town and things like that. So the cost of the trip is $14.25. Students have ample opportunity to fundraise that trip. We have 3 fundraisers just this year that go towards it, and if they have fundraised in previous years, all that money additionally carries over. Chaperones, we take plenty of adults. I believe school policy is 1 adult for every 10 students. I aim generally for 1 for every 8 students. It makes things a little safer, a little easier, and it keeps parents, it eases some concerns there. We're doing a lot of very cool things. We're spending a day at like a dude ranch where kids get to be cowboys and cowgirls. I don't know. They're really excited about it. We're spending the evening on a riverwalk cruise. We are exploring some caverns down there and exploring some of the Spanish missions. And then the most important part is the music aspect of the trip. We are performing at the Alamo, so we have that set up, and we will be doing a clinic at the University of Texas, San Antonio, where a professor of music will work with our students and will perform for him, and they will give us some tips and pointers that we can bring back for the rest of the students. It is optional, it's not a mandatory trip, and we try to make it as accessible as possible for every student.
How many students are you expecting?
In previous years, it's kind of fluctuated. We went to Nashville 2 years ago, and I had about 50 students go, so about anywhere from, we're anticipating 50 to 70 students. So,
Good number.
it is a good number. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Need a motion?
I move to approve the choir trip proposal to San Antonio, Texas for March 19th to the 22nd, 2016.
Mr. Drake and Mr. Walsh. Roll call.
Mrs. Biondi?
Yes.
Ms. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Munda?
Yes.
Mrs. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Walls?
Yes.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
7 yes, motion carries.
We have a second reading and approval of board policies. These are the ones we talked about last meeting, I believe. So we don't have any questions, then we need a motion.
I move to approve the second reading and approval of district board policies as presented.
Second.
Conway and Drake, roll call.
Mr. Walls?
Yes.
Mr. Munda?
Yes.
Ms. Campbell? No. Mrs. Biondi?
No.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mrs. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
I have 5 yes and 2 no, motion carries.
Okay, I got two motions on the bills. The first one I'm gonna do is for everything but the Hodges and the Easy bill. So I move to approve the payment of bills for 10/27/15 in the amount of $5,687,330.47.
Second.
Roll call.
Motion by Anderson, second by Munda. Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Ms. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Walls?
Yes.
Mrs. Conway?
Yes.
Mrs. Biondi?
No.
Mr. Munda?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
I have 6 yes and 1 no, motion carries.
I move to approve the payment of check number 328457 to Hodges and Louisiana in the amount of $9,272.47.
Second.
Roll call.
Motion by Anderson, second by Munda. Mr. Walls?
Yes.
Ms. Campbell?
No.
Mrs. Conway?
Yes.
Mrs. Biondi?
No.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Munda?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
I have 5 yes, 2 no, motion carries. John, before you move on, can I ask a payable question? Why are we approving of the June 2015 payroll in October 2015?
Because we forgot to include it, so we wanted to make sure that we did include it. Ms. Biondi had brought that up to me, so.
So we have to vote on, we already paid it, so we got to vote on it anyway, so.
Okay.
Okay,
I have another question.
well, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
If you're gonna vote no on both of them, why do you separate them? Just out of curiosity, it makes no sense, but, to me, but, you can, I mean, it's okay.
Well,
I mean,
it offers other members an opportunity,
So
and
you're
that
doing it
was
for
one of my
Kathy?
questions. That has to do with the question I was going to ask.
Go right ahead.
On September 22nd, 2015, we fired Peg Marar. Yet our attorney is getting paid to still proceed with a result other than a lawsuit. And I want to know who it is, when we had a meeting to have our attorney continue these negotiations, and when a posted open meeting occurred for our attorney to continue these negotiations, and why we are paying when We fired her.
So, I can answer that question, Liz, because you were there. We had a meeting and discussed it and decided to try to make an offer to her.
But that was before the September 22nd meeting.
I don't think so.
Yes, it was.
I don't think so.
Yes, it was. And we agreed that if she didn't come, if we didn't get a result, that we would proceed with dismissal at the September 22nd. And you can listen to the 2 closed meetings we've had.
I'll do that. Okay, thank you. God dang it. Switched on me. Let me go back. There it is. Okay, it's back.
I'm frozen.
Okay, hiring recommendations? We need a motion?
I'll move to approve Exhibit A, personnel recommendations numbers 101 through 115.
Second.
Roll call.
Motion by Munda, second by Conway. Mr. Walls?
Yes.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Ms. Campbell?
Yes.
Mrs. Biondi?
Yes.
Mrs. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Munda?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
I have 7 yes, motion carries.
Next item is the regular meeting minutes for September 22nd.
I'll move to approve the regular minute meetings and executive session minutes of September 22nd, 2015.
Second.
I think it might have pulled up, but there was a reference to what I said in regards to old business C, which had to do with the dismissal of Director of Special Ed Peg Marar. I can't get it to pull up, but what it stated in the minutes is not what I expressed. What I stated was that I didn't think it was fair to go from 2 evaluations that did not include a disciplinary action plan to dismissal. And that's not what it says in the minutes. So I think it mischaracterizes what I was saying. I can either correct it or I'll just vote no.
Okay, great. Do we have a motion? Yes, we do. Roll call.
Motion by Munda, second by Drake. Mrs. Conway?
Yes.
Ms. Campbell?
No.
Mrs. Biondi?
No.
Mr. Walls?
Yes.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Munda?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
I have 5 yes and 2 no. Motion carries.
Next is the special meeting minutes and executive session minutes of October 7th. Need a roll call, let's see, we have a motion then.
Move to approve the minutes of the special meeting and executive session minutes of October 7th, 2015.
Second. Roll call.
Motion by Campbell, second by Anderson. Mrs. Conway?
Abstain, I was not present.
Mr. Munda?
Abstain, I was not present.
Mr. Walls?
Yes.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mrs. Biondi?
No.
Let me see, Ms. Campbell?
Yes.
And Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
So I have 4 yes, 1 no, and 2 abstentions. Motion carries.
Very good. That is the last item on the agenda, ladies and gentlemen. I move we adjourn the meeting. Roll call.
Motion by Anderson, second by Munda. Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mrs. Biondi?
Yes.
Mrs. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Walls?
Yes.
Ms. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Munda?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
7 yes, motion carries.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.